one of the best things you can do to help us out, the way this podcast grows, the way we can get our message out to more people, is going ahead and for you to share it, for you to like it, for you to comment on everything. Those are the types of things that go ahead and help build this. We appreciate you. We appreciate those who listen. We appreciate those who share. We love that. Keep coming back. So keep bringing friends. So we're looking to get more positive people, more quality people into this industry so that we can build the construction industry back and keep it strong as we move forward through the next couple of decades. Welcome to the Builder Hacks Podcast, your go-to destination for cutting-edge strategies, time-tested systems, and invaluable insights to revolutionize your construction business and elevate your life. Join your hosts, Nate Piper and Keith Meals, seasoned contractors who are not just in the trenches, but are also pioneering the future of the industry through Concor University. In each episode, we dive deep into the minds of the industry's most accomplished building professionals, uncovering their secrets to success and sharing actionable tips to help you thrive. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, our goal is to empower you to build a brighter future for yourself and for America. Tune in, level up, and let's build a better tomorrow together. This is the Builder Hacks Podcast. Build your future, building America. Hey everybody, welcome back to Builder Hacks Podcast. Today we are getting the chance to grill Nate. So this is something I've been looking forward to since whenever he went ahead and had a whole bunch of questions for me. So you're all going to love this, so get ready. So grab a seat. Make sure to go ahead and pay a ton of attention. This is going to be an awesome thing. You're going to learn a lot about Nate today. But we're going to start off easy for him. So we want to go ahead and at least ease him into this before we go ahead and really hit him with some surprise questions, I think. But anyways, that's where we're going to go ahead and get started. But Nate, one of the big things is that I look at is how did you choose to get into construction?
Well, I don't know if I chose it or if it just chose me. Um, it's one of those things that's like as a kid, you know, kind of grew up around the trades and doing stuff. And, you know, my mom was a serial entrepreneur at a young age and it just kind of made sense where I mow grass and made money. And then I went and worked for some uncles and, you know, used a broom and swept and painted and put things together. And it was just always a part of it. And so I think it found me more than I found it, to be honest with you. But I don't know if I always loved it and respected it. Um,
So whenever you say you don't know whether you loved it and respected it, what do you mean by that? And then what changed or when did it change?
it was one of those things that's like when you're young, and I was young, I mean, I was 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, just kept going. It was like just something to do. And it
Right.
was, hey, I need to make some money or I needed to have something or somebody needed some help with things. My
Hmm.
mom was notorious for volunteering my time and my muscles. So it would be, oh, go down the street and help that
Nate, you
lady.
realize when you're 5'6", no one volunteers you for your muscles ever.
Well, I was 6 foot in the sixth grade, so they got
That's
volunteered for
exactly. You
everything,
always
right?
got volunteered. Yeah.
And young wiry kid. I mean, I was a little skinny beanpole, and but she'd volunteer me go change light fixtures, fix cabinet doors for old ladies down the street, cross the
Right.
if there's any kind of anybody need any help at the church, she was like, oh, take him, he can do it. So
Right.
I got volunteered quite a bit. And so I don't think I fell in love with it just because it was just part of life and second nature and
Right.
all of that. It wasn't until I guess I hit my one of my lowest points was that I was sitting in a cubicle and I had to wear a suit and tie every day. And I just felt like life was draining out of me. I was like, I hate this tie. I dripped something, I think it was like mustard on my tie for like the 19th time, and I'm scrubbing it out. And I'm just, I don't know. It just wasn't a fit for me. Whether it was the city, whether it was the job, whether it just didn't feel right. And so I got a call. I think I've told this story a couple of times. I got a call, go down, do a hurricane. And the moment that I stepped into my mud boots and stepped onto the trash, the designated soil of
Right.
garbage and oil fluid and just nasty stuff, I just this thing just hit me. It's like, this is it. This is wonderful. You get those smells of rotten decay and all this stuff. And I was like, I'm in heaven at this point. And so um, I think that's the moment that I realized that I love being outside doing the thing.
Right.
And so
It's and it's funny that it's those things. If you're someone who's listening to this and you're like, you know what, I've had those moments, but you haven't gone ahead and taken that step, things like that are a key. I mean, you can really feel like I know one of the pieces that Nate and I have talked about before so many times on the podcast. One of the things that we both love is that ability that we get to do something that you get to see the results
yeah,
and something that stands the test of time that you can see the results for years.
yeah,
And those types of things like that. I know that's one of the big things that gets me. And for me, it's funny because mine was like that job that you had where you were working in a cubicle with a tie on and everything like
yeah,
that. I mean, whenever I had moved to Florida, I ended up getting back into construction relatively soon. But it was a big difference for me whenever I was working for somebody else and whenever I started my own thing. Because whenever I was working for somebody else, it was that job. It was
yeah,
I've got to go and do this. And I'd be driving home at night and I'm like, do I really want to do this? Is this where I want to, is this where I'm going to be for the rest of my life type of thing? And that was every morning and every night. So coming in. And
yeah,
it's funny because at that time, a lot of it was frustration because I would see the way some of the builders that I was working for were doing things, and they've got their reasons for why they do what they do. Right or wrong, it's what works for them. It didn't agree with me. And that
yeah,
was always my biggest challenge whenever I was working for them. So I was like, this just doesn't feel right. I know this can be done a different way, more effectively for one. I always think about homeowners and things like that. There's a more effective way for the homeowners to be able to go ahead and get what they want. And that was where once I went ahead and changed, well, once I got laid off, so in 2009, I got kicked out the door. And then I opened up my own business. It's funny because everything I was doing was the same, except it was mine.
yeah.
And it's literally then that's whenever it turned into the love. So, and then I had the spark and the energy behind it as opposed to it's just another job. I've got to go do this. So it just is the day.
It makes all the difference in the world. You know, it's never a job when you're doing something you love,
No.
you know?
And it's a huge difference whatever you get into that. So, looking for those types of things. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have the jobs because a lot of times the jobs are the way that gets you to where you find the thing that you end up loving.
Yeah,
And it's like I said, different routes. Nate realized once he got out of an office, he got out into nature. So got to even though some people would look at that and go, "What do you mean you got out into the rotten smell and decay and everything? And that's what you love?
yeah,
What's
yeah,
going on with Nate?"
yeah. In a
But
fifth wheel trailer, with nine other dudes stinking, not taking naps. No, that's the way to do it.
we have a whole lot of other questions now, Nate, that I didn't have on the
Fire
list
away.
originally. Yeah. So whenever you did that,
Yeah.
was that the start of GRS or did GRS come along later on?
GRS came, a few evolutions later.
Okay.
That was kind of like my step in and kind of relearning the construction trade and mostly, disasters and restoration pieces and things of that
Right.
nature. And kind of got in with a different company with, um, you know, a different guy that was running it. It was his company. I came in as kind of like, just a young kid that was
Okay.
just helping him do his thing. And I did that for a couple of years, and then we converted into being partners.
Okay.
And we did that for a few years, and then after that, we parted ways, amicably. It's kind of like one of those things where he had other things going on in his personal life and he couldn't dedicate his time and effort into the business. And I didn't want to put all my eggs in the basket. He get all the rewards. So it was like one of those things like, this isn't working for either one of us. And about this time was
And
2009.
here's the thing I want all of our listeners to realize. Anytime any one of us says we parted amicably, that means that we just decided not to do it with tearing each other down in the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
So,
And,
so it
and
comes
throwing
down to,
punches.
yeah, exactly. So it's like, I think we're going to be better off just going our own route. I've used that same terminology. That's why I recognize it.
Yeah,
As soon as you said that,
yeah,
I started laughing. I'm like, yeah, okay. So,
yeah. And this all came to a head right there in 2008.
okay.
So right in 2008,
Yep.
it just kind of came to a head. And around that time, I went out on my own again and bought up a bunch of rental properties because you didn't need any income verification to own a property back then. So
Fog this mirror, please.
yeah, yeah. So, picked up a dozen of rental properties, and so then quickly felt the wrath of the market. Um,
Yeah.
so then I had to get a job working for somebody else again. And that, so I hooked up with a different group.
How long were you with them before you stepped
So I
back out
was,
again?
so I got on with them, and I was with them for about 6 months, and then,
Hmm.
you know, because I had been a partner before, I just came to them and say, look, either I got to be a partner or, I got to find something else.
Right.
And I came in and showed them a bunch of value on the front end of like who I am as a person, what I
Hmm.
offer, what my integrity is, what my moral compass is.
Right.
I put all that on display for them and working for a very low wage. And then turn around and said, here's who I am. You've gotten to know me over the last 6 months.
Hmm.
I either need to become partner or I need to move on. And that was kind of like a defining moment for me because they made the decision to kind of bring me into their group and kind of help run the business that was there at that time. And so
Hmm.
it's just part of the thing. And I would suggest that to any other young man that's like wanting to be a business owner, but not wanting to do it all himself in the very beginning, is
Right.
to go in there and work for the business, put in the labor, put in the attributes, show them who you are. Because when you're getting into partnerships, you're marrying to that person, right?
Hmm.
And all kind of aspects. And so um, it's not like, oh, well, let's just be partners and you just jump into it and become partners. It's
Too many people do that though.
They do, and I discourage that. I think
Yep.
that they need to slow walk it in so that
Hmm.
they have an idea of like who is this person.
Hmm.
Um, so
And,
because you got to
and
get into
realize
alignment.
and realize that. I mean, one of the big, whenever Nate said it's a business marriage is what it is whenever you go ahead and get a partner.
Hmm. Yeah,
And most people, I won't say all people, but most people, whenever they're going ahead and finding their spouse, there's a dating period, is what it comes down to, where
yeah,
you find out about the person, whether you find out that all of your values are aligned, that this could be a person that you could spend the rest of your life with, and that's when you go into a business like that. So if you're going to go into a business partnership, every once in a while you'll hear the one-off thing of two guys got together, had an idea, and went ahead and blew something up. But that's not typical. So
yeah,
you're better off going that route, like what Nate's talking about, is find out. And one of the keys that I think is so important in today's world, and one of the things that I think is missing so much from what Nate said that he did there, so is he went in and he worked for them for 6 months. He went in and busted his butt. He took less money. So knowing that I mean, hey, if it came down to it, Nate could have gone out and got more money from somebody else if he wanted to go ahead and do that.
yeah,
But it's looking at, all right, obviously you seem to like the company, you seem to like the people that you talked to before you went to work with them. And it's like you may have even, did you see opportunity at that point before you started working, that you saw an opportunity or a future to step into with them, or did that just happen to
yeah.
develop over the six
I
months?
went I went and interviewed with a bunch of different companies because at that point it's 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was late 2008 because I started with them in January of 2009.
Okay.
And it was late 2008, October, November, and I'm interviewing a
Right.
bunch of different companies, and I'm interviewing with some of the big dogs and big restoration companies.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I'm remembering back, it was BMC Cat, Belfour, Cotton. I mean, some of the
Right. Some of the
big
big ones. Right.
billion-dollar companies.
Mm-hmm.
I was interviewing with them, and it just I just knew with those companies that I was just going to be another clog in that wheel, and I'm just
Right.
going to have my little piece, and there's going to be corporate structure, and there's going to be all these different things.
Mm-hmm.
And then I interviewed with some smaller groups and the leadership teams that were there, and kind of like what their vision for the company, and kind of like what I have done because I'd already built the business, got it all the
Right.
way up to a few $1 million a year, and kind of knew all the ins and outs of running a company and doing all those things.
Okay.
And so it's like I didn't want to, go down and then have to train the owner of how to do it, and yada yada.
Right.
So, anyways, I ended up with this company that had, five different owners, and they were all really, really successful businessmen. They just weren't specialized in restoration, but they had a restoration business because they had, um, you know, access to properties, and the properties then wanted them to do this, and so it just became one of those things. And I was looking at, it, I
Right.
was like, I can do this job. I
Hmm.
can do it better and more efficient and more profitable than how it's being run. And there's a ton of upside, and
Hmm.
especially with an investment group um, who had the financial capital to be able to support it. It made sense for me. And that's kind of how I made the decision to kind of get into that world and work with them. And so,
And I think that's one of the keep it one of the things whenever I'm doing this interview, we're interviewing Nate. So one of the things I would encourage all of you to look at is listen to the thought process. So listen to how he actually worked through it, because that's one of the biggest things you can always take from somebody whenever you're asking them questions, finding out about them, finding out how they went ahead and did what they did. So, and one of the key pieces that so many times we don't recognize in ourselves, is how we actually work through those decisions, because so many times for us it's innate. So it's just what we do. So whether that's how you were originally or whether that's what you've developed. So, and I want everyone that's listening to realize that these are how you go ahead and make those right decisions, whether it's going to work for a new company like what Nate was doing there. So I'm sure we'll see this as we go through the rest of this, with all the companies that he's gone ahead and formed, and grown. That same piece is like, how do you see an industry? Well, I'm sure he runs through the same type of checklist. You see the opportunities, you see where you bring your strengths, you see the people that you can bring in to be able to go ahead and leverage their strengths and your weaknesses and go ahead and build something. And that's the key piece that so many people, especially in this industry, miss. They'll come in and it's like, I've had people come in and, within a month, they're like, all right, I'm ready to be a partner. I'm like, awesome. So what are you bringing to the table? How is this going to go ahead and work out? What value and benefit are you bringing for me? And they don't realize that there's a whole equation that goes with that. And a lot of times they think it's, well, they know the same thing that I know. Well, I don't need someone who knows what I know. I need someone who knows what I don't know. So the things that I'm weak in. And
yeah,
that's what I'm typically looking for. And it's, I learned this lesson early in my life, because actually, one of the people that I went and worked with, so I had been there, and I'd actually been there for a couple years. And I'm like, all right, I want to go ahead and I want to move forward. And if I'm going to continue doing this and putting the amount of time, effort, and energy into your business, so the only way I see this is me going ahead and being a partner with you in some way, shape, or form. I'm like, I'm not looking for a 50-50 partnership. I'm looking for a piece of the business that goes ahead and encourages me to continue
yeah,
working as hard as I am right now for you.
yeah,
So, and he's like, I just don't see it at this point. He said, it's not the way it goes. So I'm like,
yeah,
I got it. So what I got then was my answer, of what I was going to need to do. It didn't mean I left that working with them at that point, because I still kept that position. So
yeah,
what it did though is it guided the route that I was going to take after that. So when I started creating something on my own, that's now been built into what I've got right now. And those types of things happen. So, and
yeah,
again, they happen. If you listen to some of our other podcasts, very big about it, everything happens to you for a reason, and that happened to me for a reason. So to show me that it was my time to go ahead and create my own piece. That was
yeah.
what it came down to.
Well, and when I went into partnership with them, I didn't get 50%. I got a
Right.
small little
Right.
sliver of the pie. But it was it was something that gave me the sense of like I'm invested into this too,
Right.
right? That this isn't just all of you and I'm just an employee.
Hmm.
If I'm going to put my blood, sweat, and tears into this, then I want some extra benefit on that.
Yeah.
And so, but it's you know everybody's got to do what they have to do for them personally. But I
Right.
would encourage you, if you can see a bigger picture and take advantage of that bigger picture and try to work it, because you don't have to own all of it to be successful and have good
Oh,
partners
wow.
and all that. So, and it
Well,
also shows that you are a good partner when you realize I don't need to have 50% or
right.
25%, 33.45%, right? It's like, look, let's start something. You can add
Start
more
small.
shares later or do
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. And like whenever Nate's talking about that, you look at some of the most, actually some of the richest people in the world. You look at the Jeff Bezoses, you look at the Elon Musks, so things like that. The companies that they're known for, They actually, like, you think they own the company? No, no, their shareholders own the company. They
Yeah,
own a percentage of the shares, and even the percentage of their shares now, they have a large percentage compared to everybody else. Yet
sure.
their percentage is nowhere near. I think I forget which one it was, whether it was Elon or whether it was Jeff. So they own 17% of their company is what
Yeah,
they own,
it's
which is still
Jeff Bezos.
a huge amount of value.
Yeah,
Yet it's not a huge ownership stake. So realize
yeah,
that whenever, especially if you're going to build something big like that, a lot of times your ownership stake will actually be smaller. And it's one of the best things that you can do because when people have ownership, just like what Nate was talking about, the five gentlemen that he wanted to work with there, so that gave him some ownership. Now Nate feels like, hey, this is mine too. And I'm
yeah,
going to go ahead and treat it differently. And that's the piece that you're looking for whenever you've got a team member coming on and someone who's already gone ahead and demonstrated and they've excelled. So whether it's at your company or whether you brought them in from someplace else and this is part of their benefits package to get them to come work with you, is that, hey, I believe in you. I want you to be here for the long term. So, and that's one of the biggest things. And people will put so much more into that. It's how you go ahead and find those A players. So that, yeah, you'll pay a little bit more for that A player, but guess what? That A player is going to outproduce the B player. So usually by 75 to 100%, even though that's not the income difference that they're
yeah,
getting paid.
yeah.
Awesome. So whenever you started, so how did you make the transition? So that wasn't GRS whenever you went to work with them. That was a different company.
Yeah, that was a different company, and
Okay.
I was with them. We were together for a decade,
Okay.
and
So what,
then
yeah, what made
but
you make that decision to take the whatever the next step is? Was the next step GRS or
well, yeah, kind of.
not in the form not in the form it is now, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and so there was a point in time uh, when you have multiple people in a discussion about the business, right? You have parameters of like what to do and what not to, and what is comfortable and what is not comfortable, and some of these things. And so, in some of those discussions of growing that particular business, one of the things that I was getting a lot of was some different types of, kitchen and bathroom remodels. And so trying to bring it to the table that we could do it in that other entity,
Mhm.
but they weren't comfortable with structural engineering plans and
Right.
some of these other kind of components that went along with it, didn't want to take on the liability of it.
Yep.
And I didn't really have anybody else that I wanted to, pass this customer along to because they were my
Mhm.
previous customers that I went out, serviced, and, did it. And so it was one of those things where
Right.
if I, and I always would bring it up and be like, hey, I got this project. What do we want to do here? Can we do this
Mhm.
project? Can we not do this project? Trying to be open and transparent with it. And, a few times of being turned down saying, hey, this isn't the project that we want to do, or we're not comfortable with that. Be like,
Right.
fine. So I opened up, GRS at that point in time
Okay.
as a secondary company to the primary company, but always doing it in a way in which it's like, hey, this project come up. If we want to do this project, I want to do it here. But if you guys aren't comfortable with it, then I'll do it in a different entity with different
Mhm.
crews, different, everything.
Right.
And they were comfortable with that, and I was comfortable with that. So that's kind of how GRS kind of separated out at that
So
point in
you
time.
side hustle GRS is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's one of those
Yeah.
things, but I was transparent with it. It
Right.
wasn't like I was doing it dirty underneath the table and saying, oh,
Right.
well, I'm just going to steal this customer and so on and so forth.
Well, and that's the key that I want anyone to realize is that doing what Nate did there, where you're transparent. I mean, literally, you wanted to go ahead and have the company you were working for, that you
Yeah,
were partnering already, do that work.
yeah.
Like you said, it's just not, it wasn't where their vision of what they wanted the company doing.
It
And when you've
wasn't
got that
inside
many
those
other people to
parameters.
work with. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's like, so, what Nate did was solve a challenge. He saw an opportunity show up. He knew he wanted to help those people out because a lot of times he'd already helped
yeah,
those people out. And it's like,
yeah,
if you don't want to do it and I gave you the opportunity to do it, as long as you're okay with it, then
yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and take it on.
Well, and it wasn't like we were doing, or I was doing, you know, 100 of these projects a year. It was
Right.
like one, maybe two that would come in, and
Hmm.
we're talking, 40 to $80,000 a
Right.
year. I mean, it was extremely like minimal kind of components, right? But it was
Right.
something that I was like, This is a customer that I've already spent time with that trusted me
Mhm.
to do a job in their house. They're calling me back because their value that they got from me was what they expect.
Mhm.
And now I'm in a position where it's like I can't service them in my current position and role.
Right.
So I have to come up with a solution for that problem, and
Mhm.
opening up a different entity was that thing. And so that was in late 2017,
Mhm.
like September. And so I did one project in 2017. I did two in 2018, and I did another project in 2019. And then I went on one of my sabbaticals and
So,
went
so
to,
explain. For everybody that's on here, this is something I love this about Nate. Um, so whenever you say sabbatical, what does that mean?
well, so every couple of years, I like to go take some time off, from the business, from kind of like my day-to-day responsibilities. And that's from, I don't want to say from being a husband because I'm always a husband. And I don't want to say from being a father because I'm always a father, but just the day-to-day ins and outs, and kind of realign and reset and refocus and put into perspective kind of like where I'm currently at,
Hmm.
in my life and in my business,
Right.
and what my plan is. And I only do it on a 2-year cycle, so I can keep that fresh and tight for my planning purposes. And so it takes about, between 2 and 3 weeks to that I go off and do an activity, right? And so usually it ends up where someplace where I'm walking or hiking. And it's someplace I've never been before, so it's all fresh and new. So I get
Hmm.
a renewed sense of like me as a person, my body, my
Right.
mind, my spirit, all those kind of things.
Hmm.
And so I take notes, and it always takes me a couple of days to kind of like wear off whatever's bothering me, and
Yeah.
kind of like walk it
The
out.
usual parts, like even if somebody does a traditional vacation, the first few days you're still trying to decompress from what you normally do before you can even get into relaxing.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things. It's like, e- and the reason why I got to do it by myself is because when I go on a vacation with the family, they get to relax and do all that, and I got to like huddle them all in and corral them and make sure the planning, the food's right, the bed's right, the hotel's this person gets to do that. I'm corralling them, so it's not a vacation for me. It's just so. Anyways, when I get to go and do me, I don't have to worry about anybody but me, right? Which is
Right.
very, very simple and minimal.
Right.
And so,
Well, and
anyways,
that's the
that's
piece
what,
that gives you the opportunity to actually go ahead and decompress then, because like you said, you're
yeah,
easy to take care of. So,
yeah. Well, me by myself is easy, right?
mhm.
And so it's like I get 2 or 3 days to like work out whatever anxiety, frustration, anger, uh,
Those are the days Nate walks
emotional.
50 miles in a day.
Yeah. I mean, you work it out. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said about, physically working through,
Oh yeah.
your mental and emotional state, like where you can get it to a point where it's okay. And so I do that, and I kind of get it all to a point where um everything is just kind of at a point where I can just be comfortable with it. And
Mhm.
then I start working through, okay, this is what happened. This is kind of like what is going on with that scenario of whatever happened. And then it's like, okay, where do I want to go from this point kind of going forward? And so I start making the next plan or the next hill. It's kind of like, I don't know, if you've been hiking, you can see the destination spot at the top of the hill. And you're like, okay, great, that's where I'm going. But you don't understand that there's like another dip or another little valley or another little like traverse that you got to get over or through. So you go up and you go down, and you go up and you go down. I just make my plans kind of fit. Okay, I'm going to get from this point to that point. My ultimate goal is to get to the top of the mountain. But as I go through those things, I'm shedding some of the other components. And so that's how I do it in my 2-year cycle. So I'm like, okay, I got to get from here to there. I need to make sure that my wife stays happy. My kids are growing, they're thriving, the money's coming in, the business is growing, my
Yeah.
employees are taken care of. You know, there's a million things that I'm carrying on my shoulders and in my mind that I have to get through. And
It's so for the
then,
for those of you who haven't who haven't run a business the size of what Nate, how many people do you have working for you, not counting your subcontractor?
so there,
Gotcha.
it's
Yeah. You're looking at 100 people basically is what it comes down to.
100
And
people
that
I'm
doesn't count all
responsible.
the subcontractors that are truly more just subcontractors for you
Right.
that
Right.
rely on the business that you bring to go ahead and do the same exact things for their family. You just maybe a smaller portion of their overall
Yeah.
business. And it's so what I want people that are listening to realize is that as you level up and step up, the weight of the crown gets heavier.
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
one of the things people always like, it must be awesome to have that. It is awesome. And at the same time, it's an awesome responsibility whenever you start to look at those pieces. And that's
yeah.
why, like, whenever Nate's talking about this, it's one of the biggest challenges that you can have as a business owner is that ability to truly just shut everything off. Because there's always
Always some.
with that kind of a team looking for your guidance, there's always somebody who's looking for something. And then you've
Yeah.
got your family on top of that.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of the reasons why I choose the locations I choose when I do these things. It's because it's getting harder and harder with Elon Musk and these satellites that he's got. But I try to choose places where I don't get cell phone service, right? So I
Right.
can't check my emails, know what's going on with the business. I can't be accessible. And this is a positive in two ways. One, I get to decompress, but two, it gives an opportunity for my teams to be able to step up and rise into that gap of like, I'm missing. What would you do if I'm not there and you can't get a hold of me to make the business go? So it works in tandem.
Multiple ways, right?
And so it's really a good positive thing.
Hmm.
Some people look at it negative, but I've always had good experiences with it. So
I love that, and it is like what Nate's talking about. It's one of the things that whenever I started with my business, one of the biggest things that I learned because whenever I first started, as a lot of people, it's like you're the business, so you're the one that's there running it. And as I started bringing in subcontractors to do more and more things, it's like, all right, what do I do? I mean, I used to coach and train entrepreneurs, is what I used to do, and we used to do, I say 5 definite planned events, and we used to have usually a couple other ones, and I would be away doing those events for a week at a time. Is what would end up happening. So you figure 6 or 7 times a year, I'm gone for a week out of my business. It teaches you how to go ahead and run systems, train people to be able to handle things effectively. You get to stress test your team because you get to find out what they know and what they don't know, so then you know what to train them on next to go ahead and get them to that next level. And you truly get to find out whether your business is a business or whether it's a very good paying job. So that's what it comes down to.
yeah,
um, and it's all the benefits that come from that. And like whenever Nate does it at the level that he does it, where he steps away and he tries to limit as much as he can any kind of internet access. It's, as you all know at this point, all of us are so dependent on our phones. I challenge you even just to go a weekend without touching your phone. Literally set it in a room and do not go get it until Monday morning. I
yeah,
challenge you to do that. So you're going to have so many things come up. So, and being gone for 2 weeks like that or more. So knowing that you've got a large company, so it's running, so you've got your family and
yeah,
your ability to step aside from all of that. So it's truly liberating, but at the same time, probably a little bit of anxiety in the beginning whenever you go ahead and get out there. That's why you said it takes you a couple of days to work through
takes me about
boundaries.
3 days to get disconnected.
Yep. I believe, and it's like I know whenever we go away we have one vacation a year that I attempt to do that as much as I possibly can, and I'm
Yeah,
still working to get to the level where Nate does it. I literally shut my business down between Christmas and New Year's most years, so and I don't go ahead and look at my phone. So, but there's still times where that's the goal is I don't look at my phone. There's still times that I will. So
yeah,
usually every morning I still check it. So on
yeah,
that end of things. And it's a hard habit to break. That's why I challenge you to go ahead and do those types of things, because it really will go ahead and do that. But it's by doing the different things I've done by being gone for weeks at a time or a week at a time. So and now doing that as far as the Christmas time goes, it gives you that recharge time, and that's what that Christmas time is for me. The same way is that it's that chance to not worry about. It. Although I go a step further, where Nate goes on vacation and Nate's the one organizing everybody. So and he's got a few more people in his family to go ahead and organize than what I have. But whenever we would go away, that was always my rule. So I always looked at Alice. I'm like, I make decisions 51 weeks out of the year, every day, so every hour, so that I'm awake. I'm like, this week I'm here, so I'm here
Yeah,
to enjoy. You make all the
you
decisions,
do
you
it.
plan all the activities, you plan the place that we stay. So
Yep.
you plan dinners, all of that stuff. I don't want to have to worry about anything except showing up and having a good time and enjoying myself with my family.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Yep. Well,
But I
awesome.
highly recommend people to do a sabbatical. Is what I call a sabbatical. I mean,
Yeah.
and
It's, and I love that idea. So and Nate, where have you been? Just to give them an idea of where you've gone, where you've done these sabbaticals at.
well, I try to go all over. So when I made the decision for GRS, it was Mount Kilimanjaro. Um, that's in Africa. That's in Tanzania, and then been to um, well, golly, been to a lot of them. All right, so there was Mount Fuji in Japan. Then we had Peru. Let's see, we've gone to Doha. Um, just got back from Antarctica. Let's see, where else? Oh, I walked across England. Um, there's just these random places that just kind of like come up. I've gotten six of the seven continents. The seventh one is coming at some point. Can't say when. Might be a little bit longer than what I want to, but at some point in time, I'll have. And
He
my
he
plan there is
just
to go to
got
the
back from
center.
Antarctica. So if he goes ahead and commits to when he's going to do this other one, so he may face repercussions at home right now. So that's what
Yeah,
he's
so
saying.
that's a distant future, kind of component. Um, but anyway, it's like so you get out. So like I try to pick these different destination spots that either limited people are gone to or it's not a tourist attraction.
Right.
And when I was in England, I walked across, from one sea to the other sea for a place that's called Hadrian's Wall, which is a wall that was built in 122 AD by the Romans, and it's still standing. So for me being in construction, that's fascinating for me. And I
Yeah.
walked it. It's 100 and something miles and coast to coast, and it took me, I think it was like 13 days to walk all the way from side to side. And
Mhm.
so, it's just doing that. And when I was in Peru, I went to uh, Machu Picchu, and we took the Inca Trail, and we hiked that. And and that was, what was it, 9 days? And so up and down mountains, you know, and
Mhm.
I always choose like porters, kind of like carry all the stuff, and so all I have to worry about is my backpack and me. They carry, all the gear that's needed, the tents, the meal prep, the setup, all the stuff, because you're out there, and so um, these things kind of give me a chance to disconnect, reconnect with myself, plan, and be prepared for the future. And so that's what I did. And so to get back to your original question, like
Mhm.
when did GRS kind of form
Right.
officially? Um, I was on, I don't know, day 9 or day 10. No, I'm sorry, day 8. It was day 8 of going up to the top of Kilimanjaro, and I'm halfway up this windy road. And road is a walk path. Um, and I just got hit. It's like there's problems in the business with the other partners that were arguing and fighting and suing each other and all that kind of fun stuff. And
Welcome to
it's like,
partnerships, kids. So,
yeah. And there's this moment where I just said, I've got to do something different.
mhm.
And so literally, that was the moment that I said, all right, I've got to walk away from this. And in order to do that, I got to start this. And I've already had this one going. So let's just get up and running. And
Mhm.
literally got back to the US. I was sick for a couple of weeks. And then literally December of 19 said, all right, this is what's going on. Talked to the partners on the other end, cleared it out. Um, and move forward into opening this in January, late January of 2020. And so, or what, 5 years, just crossed the 5 year mark, I guess.
Great time to open up a business, Nate. Like, not
Yeah,
there wasn't
like
anything going on right
a
about
month
then.
before COVID, you know.
Exactly.
Let's talk about challenges, you know.
Exactly. So, yeah, I opened a home renovation company, and I am not allowed in anybody's house. So
Yeah.
this is awesome.
Well, it's the funniest part is like, okay, what are we gonna do now? And then the phone just didn't stop ringing.
Yep.
And we just kept
Truly
working.
one of the best times to own a construction company because everybody was at home and they
Yeah.
all had ideas of what they wanted to do now after spending
I
some time
can't
there.
tell you how many dining rooms we converted into offices,
Yep.
you know, in that 18-month period. I mean, it was like
Uh-huh.
two a week.
Yep.
And so
And that's it,
that's
and
how it kind
it's
of conformed.
and what I want to go ahead and show everybody is like what Nate had the partnership that he had with the company he was working with or the guys that he was working with in that partnership. So it sounded like it was doing relatively well as far as the
Yeah.
partnership. I mean, as far as the business goes. So
The business was doing fine.
right. And
The,
then
the,
so the challenge becomes is and this is what a lot of people face, whether they're working in a business with partners and they're like, I don't know whether this is going to be the thing for me, or whether they're working as an employee for somebody else. Oh, it's when is that right time to step out? Because a lot of times, especially when you've got something really successful or you're an employee and you've got a higher position. So it's that point of I don't want to let go of what I've got. So because it's good, and I know so many people who stick in that space because they're unwilling to go ahead and take the risk. They're unwilling to go ahead and go backwards a lot of times. So which is
yeah.
what happens a lot of times whenever things happen. So whenever you did that, Nate, I mean, how did you come to that decision that, you know what, I'm okay with stepping away with the good to go after the great?
Well, I don't even know if I knew that it was stepping away from the good to go after the great. I think it was one of those decisions. It's like, well, we talked about in yours. It's like you hit a point um, where you're like, I'm comfortable with taking this risk
Hmm.
because even if it fails, I'm still in a better spot. And I was comfortable with, having the knowledge and the confidence inside of myself to make the business work that I just said, what happens if it fails? Am I still going to breathe? Okay. Can I still go out and find another way to make money? Okay.
Right.
So what fears do I really need to do to step out and do this differently? And I started thinking about it, and from that day on day 8, because I had, well, so that Kilimanjaro trip, I had Mount Kilimanjaro, and then I went to the Serengeti, and I did an animal safari for a few days.
Hmm.
So I still had like another 10 more days after I made that decision to
Right.
start putting my plan into place of like, how would I do this? What would this look like? How would I, tell the partners that I'm not going to be a part of this anymore? And what are the ramifications of that? And, I start working through all these different scenarios, but it's like once you make a decision, then you've made a decision. And now it's like, where do I go from that point? You just start lining out the next track. And so, it wasn't a point of failure. It's like I've been broke before, and so I can redo it. I can make it again.
Hmm.
I don't care if I fail because I can just redo it again and again. And so now it's just, okay, what is the right track to lay now? And then what's the right track to lay after that? And so that's
Yep.
what all the
So
planning's
with
about.
even laying that process out, was there any nervousness or trepidation when you got home and went to talk to the partners at all, or you
Not the
were already
partners.
concrete in your decision, you're ready to go and you're fine?
Yeah, it wasn't. I didn't have any issues with the partners. I was already made that decision had been made.
Okay.
The thing that I was nervous about more than anything else was having to come back and tell my wife that I'm switching gears without her input. Um, because at that point in time, you get married, you want to make, decisions together. I
Right.
didn't know what her response was going to be upon making this kind of change and things of that nature. So I was more worried about having that conversation
Right.
than I was about any other conversation, just because, she's my wife and I care about what she thinks.
Right. And I mean, and it's part of what you end up going through a lot of times with on the personal side of things. Whenever you've got something where you're bringing money and they start to worry about, all right, the security's gone because so many people look at a job as, hey, we're going to go ahead and, this is what
Yeah.
takes care of us. And until you've gone through that piece where, all right, it doesn't really take care of you. So you're relying on somebody else and you're relying on their wishes. And if things change in their mind, all of a sudden your life changes without you having any input at all,
Yeah.
which is what I experienced with that piece. But it can be a hard thing, especially if you come from, or your partner in that case comes from that mindset. That's what they've been taught. You get a good job, you stay there, you work really hard. So that becomes a much more interesting conversation.
Well,
So,
and that's exactly where we're at. Like we're opposites, which kind of
right,
helps us gel together. Where I'm a risk taker and she's a risk averter. And so, it's one of those things that's like, okay, you're doing something on shaky ground over here. I don't know if I like that or not. And how
right,
confident are you? And it goes down the list. And but I think that's where you step into, what people call faith, right? Is where
right,
you step out into the unknown of like, okay, I have this thing that I'm confident about. I don't have any guarantees. There is
right.
no lifeline. There is no safety net.
Hmm.
This is where we go to, challenge ourselves and step out into it. Um, and whether you can do it or you can't do it, you either soar and fly or you stand there on the hill waiting to go. I don't know
Yeah,
how else to explain it, right? So it's like I wasn't going to just stay in the same spot because once I've identified the true problem that was there, that was holding the business back, which had nothing to do with the business, but had everything to do with the people that were kind of controlling the business.
yep,
And to kind of give you guys some context, right? It's like the business is making money and everybody's getting distributions, but the vans and the vehicles and the equipment and all of that were in serious need of repair, right? Where
right,
tires, buying used tires for $5 from the the Hispanic shop down the road just to keep the vans moving, right? It's like, can we buy tires? Well, I'd rather have my distribution check, right? It's like,
yeah,
okay, well, can we buy new equipment? Because the equipment that we need to do the job is broken and I can't fix it because we don't have the part. So can we
right,
have money for that? And so it becomes this conflict, right? And so when it became that, and there's plenty of capital coming in from the guys doing
right,
the job, they just weren't wanting to reinvest it, or a couple of them weren't wanting to reinvest it. And that's when I had to make a decision of like, what's best for these guys, what's best for me, what's best for this business. And if it's not in line with me anymore, then I can't stay and support it. So that was the ultimate goal. And once I was, 8 days in, 3 days of getting rid of the business or getting rid of all the stress and everything else, had another 5 days to really work on the core issue because there you get surface issues and then you
right.
have secondary issues and third issues and then core issues. And it
Hmm.
took me to day 8 to figure out the core issue. The core issue was the partners that I had didn't care about the business the same way that I cared about the business, and they weren't going to care about the business the same way that I was going to care about the business.
Yep.
It's not that they're bad people. It's not that
Yeah.
they did anything wrong. They had some conflicts and they had different things going on, but
Hmm.
they didn't care about it the same way that I did, which wasn't going to change. And so that made me have to make a decision. Can I
Yeah.
live with this or can I not live with this? And
And I think that's what happens for a lot of entrepreneurs and how a lot of businesses actually get started is those types of non-congruent visions. So is really
yeah,
what it comes down to. So when it's like, all right, well, I've got a different way that I want to go ahead and do this, and I have a hard time looking at myself in the mirror every morning, knowing that I'm doing what I'm doing because that's the way the business is structured and that's what they require. Yet that's hard for me to go ahead and stomach because I know it can be a lot different than this.
yeah,
That is what it comes down to. And it is. It's what the best thing though is like I said is Nate went ahead and took the step. So because I've seen so many people that know that piece yet they're too afraid to go ahead and step out of there. And there can be a million different reasons for that on that side of things. But I highly encourage you if you're ready to go ahead and do that. So, that's one of the things like definitely reaching out to somebody and having a conversation if you're unable to make that decision on your own. So go ahead and talk to somebody else if you need that guidance. So, and what that may look like, and realize it's like Nate said before, if he went ahead and did this and it didn't work out, Nate wasn't worried about it. I mean, he knows it definitely can get another job again. There wasn't an issue with that. So he'd have no
sure.
issue there at all. So, or he'd go ahead and create another business. And, he's been up and he's been down as far as his life goes, as far as income goes. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that most of the people who own businesses and have achieved a great level of success, that's one of the reasons why they're able to stomach the risk because they know if something happens, I can do this again. It's not an issue. So
Yeah,
I'll just have to go ahead and recreate it. And will it be an inconvenient temporary time? It may be. So yet at the
yeah,
same time, I'm okay with that piece.
I am.
Yeah.
I do it
The
again
hard part
tomorrow.
sometimes is getting your family on board the same way because they get used to doing what they get used to doing, and it
Yeah.
can go ahead and affect that piece.
It just causes, I try to minimize the stress that comes to the house. You know,
Hmm.
the stress that comes to the business, I can't minimize that. It
Right.
is what it is. Everybody has to be aware of it. All team
Hmm.
members have to know about it. Um, there is no cover up. There is no hiding. Um,
Yep.
it's 100 transparent. But when I go home, I try to leave the stress of the business at the business and not bring that stress into the house. I mean, I got kids, right? I've got young ones,
Hmm.
and they're growing up, and I take the responsibility of raising them, serious, and it's at a core issue for me. And so it's like if I can minimize their stress and their worry um, as much as I can, then they can kind of focus and develop on who they are as individuals and what they're wanting to do and all their accomplishments. And so, that's where that conversation of like, I got to have this with my wife that there's going to be a change, but I don't want there to be any kind of like disruption inside the house on, okay,
Right.
we might need to dial back and not go out to eat
Right.
6 days a
It's
week. We might have to cook some meals at home. We might have to
right.
like, not
But
buy a
those
new
are the real
vehicle this year.
conversations you want to have, though, with the people that these decisions are going to affect.
Exactly. So, but it's been good. It's like all things.
So
You have some,
what do you think's been the key for you or some of the key strategies for you for growing GRS from taking that point where you were like you said you did one job in 17, two jobs in 18, and then 19 you made the decision and going into 20. So
yeah.
what do you feel has been key to growing?
The key to growing is always, you know, having bigger eyes and going after it. And what I mean by that is like you see opportunities, and you can either look at the opportunities and be like, "Oh, that's an opportunity," or you can look at an opportunity and say, "Well, how can I make that work? What things that are there that make sense?" And it's kind
Hmm.
of like, I've gotten a few of these companies now where I figure out the people that I can have and work with and kind of like partner with them and support them and then kind of like put them into those places. And so, we weren't scared in 2020. It's like, okay, I'm a kitchen and bathroom guy. I'm a ground up builder guy.
Hmm.
So when I made that decision, I already had a couple other businesses kind of running and going. Like I was doing ground up building and I was doing some other things. And, you know, Greenlight Restoration was kind of doing a couple different things. Really, outrageous kind of mold remediation kind of work and
Right.
kitchen and bathroom stuff. And so
Hmm.
2020 hit, I've got kitchen and bathroom crews, but everybody wanted offices, right? And they
Right.
wanted the remodel office and they wanted it now. And so it's like, okay, can I take my remodel crews and now put them into just building or enclosing, dining rooms
Yep.
into offices? And what does that look like?
Hmm.
And can I put together a design package real fast? And so worked all that up and took advantage of that opportunity in that moment with these guys and trained them how to do it. That's part of the keys of success is like there's the opportunity. Now can you figure out how to line it out so that it makes sense? And I got to go back and look at the books, but I think in 2020, in 2021, just in converting, um, the dining room into offices, I think we did like $1.1 million in just
Oh, did you?
revenue.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it was just a quick revenue stream. It was just,
Right.
and it's like you got to be able to move with it when it moves. And there's, you know, the ocean has waves, right? And
Hmm.
it's like you can catch a wave or you can leave a wave or you can wait for the next one. And I just try to catch whatever wave is coming next. And so that wave was,
How do you identify what the new wave is going to be or what the effective way. Like in this case for COVID, how did you identify that, hey, maybe focusing on going ahead and building people's, remodeling people's offices or getting them offices in their homes is the opportunity right now?
You know, I don't know. I don't know a true answer to that.
Okay.
I've got a gift um, that I'm able to kind of like see these things where they're just clear and transparent. Just I
Hmm.
just know. I don't know how to explain how I'm able to like figure that out, but it's like, okay, I see it, it makes sense. I do research on it. I take it through my process. I stress test it, and if it everything checks, I just steamroll ahead and I don't worry about anything else. And like these office conversions, it was one of the things that's like I got one phone call, saying, "Hey,
Hmm. Do you
my
do this?
company is
Right.
now working from home, and I need to
Right.
set up. I need to get internet. I need to get a drop line. I need to like close it in. The
Yep.
only space I got in my house that's not being used is the dining room, and I've got kids, so I got to make sure that it's insulated
Hmm.
properly. I got $35,000. Can you get started this week? Because I got to be up and
Hmm.
running." And that one phone call said, "Okay, let's launch." You know,
Right.
and it's like, and then I said, "Well, how many more of these?"
Hmm.
And so I stress tested it. Right, I threw a few $1,000s behind some ads. Got a ton of phone calls coming in, and I was like, "This is a need that's needed now. I don't know how long it's going to last, but we're
Right.
going to do it." And then we started getting other phone calls, and we go in there and we'll do the office conversion, and then the next thing you know, oh well, while you're here, can you paint that bedroom, or can you add a patio, or
Right.
can you upgrade this bathroom? It was just a lead source that just kept unrolling.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's kind of how those things kind of pop up. It's like right now we're in a different market cycle, where
Yeah. So
people
where do
have
you
been,
see the industry going right now in the next 5 years?
well, I can't predict 5 years.
All right.
I'm good at
Ne-
2.
All right. Next two.
You
That's
know,
true because you do your sabbaticals for 2 years. What do you see that happen in the industry for the next 2 years?
I see a lot of growth, especially in the construction industry. Residential construction is kind of like my specialty, but
Hmm.
there's going to be a lot of upgrade and expansion. We're still short on housing throughout the nation.
Right.
Those that have homes and not moving, they've been scared to do the updates and the remodels that they've been needing to do for the last 5 to 6 years,
Hmm.
really 5 years, because most people were scared during the last election cycle, and then nobody's really had the wherewithal or to do inside of their uh, they're in the Biden years, and now we're in the first year of Trump and the first quarter. You know, most people, let me back up. Most people have their money set away in the stock market, right? And so when you see the stock market dip, you start seeing people that like restrict or hold on to cash and everything else.
Hmm.
When we saw the rise in the stock market with Biden, most of those people are looking for long-term investments. So they're like, oh, okay, it rose all the way up. We'll keep the money in. They're not
Hmm.
taking it out. And I think as we move into probably quarter two, quarter three of this Trump administration, we're going to start to see that the markets start to balance out, that supply starts to come back to America, where we're having more products that are being here. We have
Right.
better trade arrangements. I know that everybody's talking about tariffs right now and that whole component, but it's important to understand that the tariffs that are being put on us to bring in the goods have no tariffs on the ports on the stuff that's going out, right? So they're making money, we're not making money. So if we can convert it, then either they need to move here and have their office here on site and get us more access, or we get money off of them. And anyways, I really see quarter three being an impactful kitchen and bathroom remodeling starting to take off, and it's going to be like that for about 2 to 3 years. Um,
Gotcha.
I think because people have been holding off on repairs
Hmm.
for 5 years, and they're at a point where they can't hold off anymore. And if they have to do it, then they might as well do the full piece. And
Right.
big lending companies, that are financing these projects, are coming in at 18 months, zero interest,
Hmm.
which are making it very appealing. I'm sure by the time we
Definitely.
get around to quarter three, it will drop down to about 12 months.
Yeah.
Um, and you'll have some that are six, and there'll be like a standard rate, about 7.5 interest rate for those
Hmm.
projects. But all of that is doable um, when you're talking about remodeling and kind of redoing your property. And plus, I truly believe that remodels are going to be impactful for a long time because who is going to sell a 3.5% interest rate? Nobody, nobody,
Exactly.
nobody.
Because you'll never see those rates. We don't ever expect to see those kind of rates again, is what it comes down to.
Never,
Right. Yeah.
never. You know, a lot of people are doing subject to deals right now
Yep.
because they just will gobble up. We want
Heck
that
yeah.
2.75, 3.5 interest rate. We'll,
Hmm.
you know, we'll take over the mortgage, we'll pay for it, we'll do a conversion. So I really think that, you know, the home improvement industry is going to take off over the, you know, we still got about 4 more months until it starts to dive in, but we have about 2 years of success with it. And I also
Awesome.
see the restoration business is kind of getting into this weird component where we have insurance companies and we have big hedge funds gobbling up every
Hmm.
restoration company out there.
Yep.
And they're doing it to control cost and to maximize profits. And
Right.
so they're looking at it as like a full turn. Um, so if you're in the restoration business, keep pumping forward because you're going to be the easy one that people would like to work with versus the one that comes from the hedge fund that they all tell you how to do things.
Yep. No question about it. So Nate, you've done a great job of scaling your business from, especially in 5 years, to go ahead and create what you've created. What would you tell someone who's looking to scale their company? How do they go ahead and do that effectively? What are the, top two or three things that you did to be able to scale your team?
You need a great CFO who can help manage the money and manage the trades, manage, you know, the investments that you have to make back into it. Um, you need a great operations manager, and you need a marketing plan. Those
Awesome.
three
Well,
things are what you have to scale.
if you're a smaller business and you're getting started, so in that scaling side of things, how do you, well, two questions out of this. One, if you choose a person to go with first, who do you go with first? And then secondly, after that, how do you find that person?
Well, you need to identify what your skill set is. So obviously, you need to have one of those three skill sets, if not all three, in
Right.
order to kind of like move to the next tier. So if we're looking at tiers of business, right, you have
Mhm.
your first tier is to get to $150,000 in revenue. And then your second tier is about 300,000. Then you have 500,000. And then you really want to get to $1 million before you start making any more investments. We're trying to go through that.
Mhm.
And then you go from 1 million to 3 million, 3 million to 5 million, 5 million to 10 million. So that projection that or that path on that journey, um, you're going to need to acquire these different types of skills to kind of get you to these different levels.
Right.
And so if you're on a point and depending on where you're at in that tier, if you're at $500,000, you can't afford a CFO.
Right.
So what you can do is, take an online course for accounting, right? And learn how to
Mhm.
run your own spreadsheets and learn how to
Yep.
document all of your expenses and kind of go through that. You can also, take a marketing class to learn how to run ads, right? Google ads, Facebook ads,
Mhm.
YouTube ads. You can learn those pieces, fairly inexpensively to give you a general knowledge of what you need to do that thing. And when you get to a point of like, I'm at $1 million and now I'm ready to go to $3 million, I would start looking at your operations manager as the first person of that business that you need to hire because that's the first portion of like being able to do more than just yourself. Anybody can maximize up to $1 million of doing all of the things by themselves, right? Like
Yep.
if you it's at $1 million. When you go from 1 million to 3 million, you can't do it alone.
Yep.
You
You can't.
have to bring in help. There is no if and buts about it. It
Hmm.
is that
It'll
is the
break you. You just don't have enough hours in the day
you just
and
don't have
enough
it
skill in those areas to be able to take the next steps.
because you're going to run out of something, or you're going to crash, right?
Yep.
Or both. And so it's once you get to 1 million, you have to have support. You have to have these things. And I would say the first person should be an operations manager. It should be probably somebody that either A, you trained and worked with to get to the $1 million that now becomes the operations manager,
Hmm.
or it needs to be somebody that has already been an operations manager for a competitor that's unhappy with their competitor's leadership and is
Right.
willing to come over. And that should be your first person that you hire on at that point, um, because that's what's going to get you from 1 million to 3 million. That's going to take a couple of years into that because the operations manager has to relearn the business, has to
Right.
worry about bringing on new trades, have to worry about training them, have to worry about pulling all those pieces together. But
Hmm.
that should be the first person that you bring on. It would be that operations
And
manager.
whenever
And
you say first person you bring on, you're talking of those three higher level people
yeah, of those
because you've
three
already
higher
by that point
level,
you've already started to add some other people because it sounded like you're talking about training up a project manager that goes ahead and steps into operations possibly.
exactly,
So,
exactly. Because at that point, um, your project manager, because for you to get to $1 million means you've had to do X amount of projects, right? Which means
mhm,
you have one or two, possibly three. Three would be heavy for project managers at $1 million, but
right.
you've got one or two project managers and yourself, or yourself and one project manager.
Hmm.
And you've got, probably around five trades that are working with you on a consistent basis.
Right.
And so your next role in that is to get that other project manager, or to get yourself out of it and leave him as a project manager and bring somebody else in that can guide that person.
Hmm.
That operations manager person is crucial at that point.
Got it.
And then once you have that established, then you need to move into what I would consider a CFO, a chief financial officer,
Hmm.
which is helping you, capture every dollar that's out there, fight for every penny of spending, really dive into the accounting functions of the business, because that's where the big hole in the boat is in the accounting function on the back end, because you're buying more material, you're spending more on labor, you're being accounted for in a different capacity, and it'll also help you with taxes and future planning and what's coming up in the projects, and being able to have a clear vision of what's going on. And so whether you take that responsibility on yourself or you hire somebody, that's completely up to you. But at some point in time, if you take it on by yourself, you're going to need to hire somebody to get that off of you and get out. Um, my advice in that category would be find somebody that you know that you can trust 100%. And the way that I kind of define 100% would be, if you were gone and that person was at your house and your wife was in the shower, without a single doubt that they are not, go into that bedroom, or that you just know that they're protected 100%, right?
Right.
I don't know how else to explain it, but I feel that way about my money. I feel that way about my wife.
Yep.
It's like, these are areas you don't play with. These are off limit kind of category.
Right.
And I truly believe that you got to find somebody to be that person, um, because
Especially when it
that's
comes to
what.
the money side of things. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's a key piece. And it's one of the things as you're growing your business until you get to the point where you're able to hire someone on full time in a CFO role. It's still having the right outside contractors, which in this
yeah.
case would be your accountant and things along those lines, where you're getting in bookkeepers. So if you've got someone doing
Your
bookkeeping part
bookkeeper,
time,
your
yeah, to
bookkeeper
be able
could
to
be
go
that
ahead and
person.
Yep, to be
train
able to
them.
go ahead and track those numbers and things like that, and with the CPA to be able to have those longer term conversations. So about what they're seeing for trends, about if you're looking to do certain moves and grow in certain ways, what that's going to mean from the financial side and how to set that up and how to go ahead and get that moving forward. So if that means pulling money back or adding money to bids to be able to go ahead and grow in a certain direction, be able to add team, whatever that is, they're the person to be able to provide that advice till you've got the full-time person on staff to be able to handle that. So realize there are some services out there that can help you as you're growing, and you really do want to use it as
Yeah.
you're moving that up. So that means finding that right person as the whether you want to call it fractional CFO, which they may
Yeah.
or
I
may
mean,
not
that's what I
be.
was going to say.
So, but that's another opportunity.
Yeah. A fractional CFO is also a great opportunity. And fractional CFO means they just work for a small portion in your business. Like they'll have 4 or 5 other businesses that they're the CFO for, but you're just getting billed for a small portion of yours, which they
Mm-hmm.
give you, a great return on your investment from the standpoint of like you're not having to pay for them full time. You're sharing the
Yep.
cost of this person. They're not having to be there every day, but they're giving you all the information that you need to make the decisions that you need to make. I'd also say, hiring a good bookkeeper, but you should have already hired a bookkeeper,
Mm-hmm.
early on because it's going to, around the time that you make $1 million, it's, a bookkeeper is probably, some trades have their wife be the bookkeeper. Some of them, they want to be the bookkeeper. Some of them, they hire a bookkeeper outside that, and you can get a
It,
fractional bookkeeper too.
right. Well,
Um,
and the key pieces there, and Nate's actually said this before, and it really is something you want to go ahead and look at. Do you have the skills to be that person? Because if you don't have the skills and you're doing it just because you don't know who to go ahead and bring in, so or
yeah,
you're even afraid of, hey, I don't have necessarily have the money that I might want to put into that person. The thing is, every person that you bring into your company, the way I go ahead and analyze return, so that, or I look at return on everybody, is are they going to return what multiple of what I'm paying them? So is what it comes down to. And if they're unable to go ahead and do that, like whenever I bring a project manager in, so for the amount of money that they're going to go ahead and make, so whatever their full benefit package is, I look at and I totally back out and it's like, all right, where's my break even point with this person? If they've got it, I've got to be able to do another $1 million in revenue in the business because of them, and that breaks me even. So then I need to add how much extra profit I want to go ahead and make off of what they're doing. So, and then that's what they have to be able to bring. If they're unable to bring that, then that may not be the right person at the right time. Or I've got to look at my business and figure out how I can go ahead and make that piece happen. So, meaning changing processes and how we actually run the business.
well, the other thing that most people don't talk about, but um, if you're sub $1 million, you will not have A+ players.
Now,
You
that's
you
one of the biggest challenges. What do you mean when you say A+ players? What's that mean?
you're not going to have somebody that doesn't have problems.
Mm-hmm.
If you're below $1 million in gross revenue, you will not be able to attract A+ players unless you just have a phenomenal business idea that is unique and nobody's touched it, no one's tapped into it. Unless you have that niche, you cannot attract A+ players because A+ players are already beyond the point of that. So either you have to go out there and pay for them, which you don't have the revenue, or you can not take a salary and pay for the A+ players to grow the business, but that gets tiring real fast.
Mm-hmm.
Or you have to find the guys that you can't afford, but with every last one of those hires, they all come with problems, right? Because what you're paying them to do, you have to realize that there's some things that they can't do or they wouldn't take that money. Meaning they can't get to work on time, they can't complete a project on time, they
Mm-hmm.
can't do the documentation work, they can't spell, they can't there there's a bunch of they can'ts in the dollar amount, right?
Right.
And so understand that they're going to need support with all those pieces. It's so funny to me because I get a different perspective now than I did 20 years ago or 15 years ago, which is, oh, I'm paying you good money to do this job.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't you do the entire job? And then I
Right.
I have more profit for the business to then reinvest and do all these things. And the
Mm-hmm.
reality of it is that they're doing the best that they can. they haven't developed their own skills to be worth more than what that is. And people fall into this trap of like, there's a baseline salary of what they need to be able to survive and only work for you. And then there's a how much they bring to the table, and does that balance? And nine
Hmm.
times out of 10, it doesn't balance. But you need to know, can they do 80% of it? Or can they do 60% of it? Or where does that fall into that line so that you can still have the back end result?
And the big piece whenever you're doing that, Nate, are you able to identify that in the beginning, or is that you identify where those shortcomings are as you go through the process as they're working for
You know, I had this conversation with my team yesterday, as a matter of fact, because we had somebody that came on and they were with us for 7 months and we were trying to get them to a point. And I got called out and said that I had been buffaloed by this guy, meaning I had been
Right.
my eyes had been wooled over, and that we lost a bunch of money. Of course, it's for my CFO, so it's all analytical, and um, and that we overpaid to not have this person in the future. And I took it. I said, okay, I could accept that. But my
Right.
response to it is that nobody ever knows if someone's going to work out or not. But
Hmm.
the reality of it is that we got to a decision within 6 months of whether or not he's going to be here for the long term
Right.
versus paying for him not to be able to do the thing for the next 5 years as we're trying to create this thing. So
Hmm.
you could take the good with the bad, but ultimately, I'm happier with being able to identify that he's not the right person within 6 months and have it exit than to spend 5 years cultivating and trying to like get him to the point of being the thing. And
And I think that's a key piece for anyone who's listening to realize is that whenever you go ahead and hire somebody and they're learning, the faster you figure out whether or not they're going to be the right person, the better it is for you. So because you don't want to go ahead and, I mean, if you're giving them opportunities, which I know Nate does whenever he's training people, and he lays out the processes and they've got a definite system that they run with. If the people aren't living up to that system to the level that Nate's talking about that you're okay with, that you're good with, and realize as business owners, and Nate's already said this, the biggest challenge we have is we figure everyone's going to put the same all into it that we put into it. Ain't happening, guys. So it's just not gonna, it never will, no matter how much you want them to. Every once in a while, you'll have a unicorn that comes rolling along, so that does that. And realize that unicorn, either you're gonna need to go ahead and train them and keep a much bigger vision in front of them for them to stick around, or at some point they're gonna go ahead and break off on their own, or go work for somebody who has a big enough company that they fit within that next step of vision. Be okay with that. It is what it is. No, but realize that whenever you've got those people that are doing it at, Nate said 60%, 80%, if it's the key pieces and you figure out what the other pieces are. So
yeah,
I'm assuming, Nate, then you have other people that go ahead and take on the additional pieces to make sure it happens effectively.
yeah, and I'll give you a prime example. This guy, he was great with documentation. He was great with follow up, and I hired him on as a project manager, right?
Right.
So he wasn't doing the work; he was kind of supervising the work, and he
Mhm.
was kind of going through those pieces. But we hired him at a seasoned project manager
Mhm.
price, and it takes 3 months for him to actually kind of get comfortable and like take the mask off, and then part of that time period is you're putting them through training after training and teaching them
Mhm.
and training them and kind of going through all those pieces. So it takes 3 months for them just to get comfortable, to learn the
Right.
process, kind of go through that. And then the next 3 months is evaluation time. And
Mhm.
so what we came to find out was that, okay, he doesn't have the skills of a seasoned project manager like he said he did when in the
Right.
interviewing process. Okay.
Imagine that an
Yeah,
interviewee lied on their
I know.
about their experience and what
Imagine
they
that,
can
right?
do.
It's like, what happened? Why didn't you pick that up? You're so good about that, right? Okay, all right, fine, I accept that. So here we are, 90 days in. Okay, well, now we have to do a different evaluation. What is the valuation on character? Does his character line up? Does the morals line up? Yes, yes. Okay, great. Can he physically do the job? Okay, great. So where is he lacking? Right? So let's go through the things that he's like, okay, now let's put together a plan so that he can work on the things that he's lacking
Mhm.
to be able to rise to the level of what it needs to be that we originally paid for, right? Or that we're currently paying to be able
Right.
to invest into him so that he can invest into the company
Right.
and all that. So we put that into place and we do that for 90 days. And so now we're 6 months in. Now we have to have a hard conversation. It's like, look, this is what you said that you wanted to do when you came on. This is what you said that your skill set was. That wasn't true, but that's okay. We understand. Here are where the pitfalls are. We
Mhm.
put plans into place. Here's what we need to do to be able to rise you to this point.
Right.
And we've been implementing that for the last 90 days. We've had some success. We've had some failures. We're doing good.
Mhm.
Now we need to ask the question. The question is, do you want to, and can you see yourself doing this for the next 3 to 5 years?
Right.
Because it's going to take that long to get you to the level of where you said you already were, but we've established that you're not there. And if
Right.
you're willing to put in the time and the effort to get there, I'm willing to walk the path with you. And ultimately, that's the decision making question, and I've structured it that way so that when the person that's on the other end has to be able to like really take a hard look, because now we don't have the mask. We don't have what you did in the past. We have current data.
Right.
And in that current data, they need to have a hard look at themselves. And in this particular case, he came back and said, you know what? It's not worth it to me to kind of like work on myself and go through this
Mhm.
process. And I don't see myself being here, you know, a year, let alone 3 years. And so he made the decision to kind of like move on
Yeah.
and find something else. But I'd rather do that than, wait 3 years and hope that he gets to that point and we're still in the
Mhm.
same boat. So you never know what you're going to get when you hire somebody. You just need to have a plan of how to like help them be successful.
Yeah.
Because I think that's something else that people don't put into place. They don't help people become successful. They just want them to be the best version of themselves, already being able to produce day
Mhm.
one. I just haven't had that kind of success, or I
I
haven't
agree.
had that lucky winning lottery ticket that does that. So
And,
when you're
and I think
hiring
what
it,
it really comes down to on the employee side of things, so is it's not good employees are found, good employees are created a
that's
lot of
it.
times. So is what it
That's
comes
truth.
down to. Because no matter what, no matter how well they perform somewhere else, they may bring skills that your company doesn't have that they're able to implement and be able to move your
Absolutely.
company forward. But at the same time, they're not coming in with what your culture is, how
Yeah.
you do things. So, and all of that comes down to what you do. So, in this case, the owner, since we're talking owner side of things, or as the management team, either way, if it's the managers, you've got to go ahead and give them that path in the process. Like Nate said, they did an evaluation, which is key because so many times companies don't do the evaluation piece. The only thing the employee ever hears is whenever they screw something up, they get told about the screwing it up. That's great. I mean, they need feedback, yet at the same time, let's give them feedback and a plan, which is what Nate talked about. That way they know what's expected, how to get there to get what's expected, so that they go ahead and reach that level, and then they're going to determine whether or not that happens. And like
That's
Nate
it.
said, I mean, gentleman made the decision that this wasn't the right thing for him. He didn't want to put the effort into it, which is fine. You'd rather find that out sooner rather than later, and that's the challenge. Like Nate did a 90-day evaluation, then they did a 90-day plan after that, and then did the evaluation after that at 6 months to find out whether the 90-day plan worked. And that was what identified it, where a lot of times employers won't get to the point that they look at that until after a year. Now you've got someone that's been there for a year, and you've paid out how much money. If they've got no interest and or even knowledge that you want them to do something different, it becomes a lot harder to go ahead and change that because now they've established how they go
Mhm.
ahead and work at your company.
Yeah. And so when I say that if you're sub $1 million, an A player, an A plus player would already be at that level of um, not needing any extra support, not needing any extra guidance, they'll need some, right? But for the most part, they're already established and know how to do the thing, and they're
Mhm.
already bringing ideas and solutions, not bringing problems. And what you'll find is that the lower tiered employees, the Bs, the Cs, the Ds, You will be able to determine the differences between where they're at with how many problems do they bring to your doorstep. Meaning, if they're coming to you and they're asking you, hey, how do I do filing? How do I do running the printer? How do I
Right.
do this and this and this? Like basic skill sets, and they're bringing you all their problems. They're a lower tiered person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't know how to do any of those things. When you get into the A tier people, here's what I get when I'm talking with my A tier people. Hey Nate, this is what happened. We had a problem on a home. It was this homeowner. This
Mm-hmm.
is what happened. Um, Here's what I've already done and lined out and got created.
Mm-hmm.
We got everything lined up. I just need to make sure your approval is okay with my strategy going forward.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you get when you get A
Right.
plus players. When I got a C player, this is what it looks like. Hey, this thing happened. She's going to call you. I don't know what we need to do.
Right.
And I'm like, well, what happened? I don't know. She's going to call you. She's just upset about something. That's what I get
And
with
it's
C
right.
players.
Yeah. And like one of the biggest things, like Nate mentioned earlier, whenever he was talking about, hey, someone, a lot of times you have people's wives that go ahead and become the bookkeeper for the business and things like that. The hardest challenge that you've got once you start bringing some employees in is looking at them and identifying whether they are an A, a B, or a C. So, and when you've got family members who are a B or a C,
Yeah.
the challenge becomes, how long do they stay in that position? Is there a better position for them? And having those real conversations of, hey, this may not be the best opportunity for you. So if there's something else. Now, a lot of times people get into that, the spouse will get into it mainly just to help out the husband or vice versa if it's the other way. And they really have no inclination or drive to be a part of the business. It's because they're supporting their spouse. In that case, they're not going to be worried about it much at all. So they'll be okay with that fact that at some point they're going to be replaced.
Yeah.
Uh, that it can be a challenging piece, and for you to step back and objectively look at it, it's the only way you can grow and scale your company. So is to start looking at those pieces to be able to go ahead and identify that, because the challenge. So here's the challenge that Nate hasn't gotten into yet. Your A players will not stick around for a long time if you're filled with B and C players.
Yeah.
So because we talked about it actually in a previous podcast. So the biggest challenge is if they're around people who are not performing at the same level they are, those non-performers are actually dragging down the A players' performance by 30%. A players recognize that. They're going to go
Immediately.
find someplace they can go play with A players. That way that their productivity, their abilities increase. So by that 15% instead. And it's huge. So once you started getting an A player, you better cycle the team quick or up level the team fast. So or
Well, it's one of the
you're gonna
reasons
lose them.
why I I encourage somebody once they hit that $1 million a year threshold to
Mhm.
hire an operations manager that is an A player,
Yep.
because then he gets to make the determination of hiring and firing
There you
and
go.
making and collecting A players or B plus players that want to be A players.
Right.
And that changes the entire dynamic of the business that then rises to the next level.
Mhm.
And so that's why it's crucial at that junction. And it's why I really like an operations director, operations manager
Mhm.
in that $1 million threshold.
And it's funny because you'll see a lot of people who go ahead and start spending a lot of money on the marketing side instead as the first
Yeah.
thing, because it's like I need volume, especially as they start hiring people. It's like I need volume, I need volume. The piece that you don't realize is volume can actually break your entire business.
Yeah.
So, because if you're bringing it in and you're unable to manage it effectively, and you're lacking the team to be able to go ahead and run those projects, all of a sudden you've just multiplied your headaches is what you've done. And or that's in a
Your
best case
problems.
scenario. Worst case scenario, you're bringing them in and you're not converting them and you're just blowing money out the door.
Yeah. A lot of people they blow up. And so their team is made up a bunch of like C, maybe B
Hmm.
minus players. And they throw their money into marketing and it blows up. But then they have their C's and their B minus players doing all of the work and doing all the things. And all of those problems compound each other. And they
Hmm.
all end up right on your front doorstep.
Yep.
And I got to learn this with the past partner as we were kind of growing that business. And that's where I learned that. And I was like, man, this is a life lesson that I am not doing anymore because without having the people trained in the right place, in the right seat, on the right bus, doing the thing, you cannot scale it. You
Yep.
you you might have the opportunity, but you don't need to put any more money behind it until it's operating, effectively and efficiently.
Mhm.
Because without it, you're just creating a bigger headache and more stress on you.
No question about it. So Nate, what's something that about running a construction business so that nobody warns you about that you found out?
On running the construction business, like just
Yep. So what's something you had no idea about that as you started running, it's like, holy cow, no one ever told me about this thing. So that's part of the business.
I don't know if there's anything that wasn't told to me because I kind of grew up in it, but I will tell you, um, the thing that snags everybody or the thing that isn't talked about as much
Mhm.
is kind of like the administration piece.
What do you mean?
So, well, you got to live inside this world of compliance, right?
Hmm.
And when you think about construction company, you don't think about compliance, right? You don't think about rules and regulations and safety meetings and
Right.
insurance and documentation and like all these different things. You're like, oh, I got a project, I got guys, I got labor, I got material, let's do it, right?
Right.
And there's this whole other world over here, part of the business that is the thing that's in the dark corner, right? It's
Right.
it's making sure that when you take on, so depending on what you do and whether or not you bring on trades or you become like a subcontractor to a bigger GC
Hmm.
or you get locked into these projects where they want you to have insurance, they want to be on your insurance. There's a little certificate holders box, and
Yep.
you're like, oh, that's no big deal, blah, blah, blah. Well, you got to email your insurance agent. You got to get it done. You got to get it
Yep.
compliant. You got to, like all these different things. And then it's like, okay, well, now I've got tradesmen working on this job. My insurance will cover me
Hmm.
up to this, but then I've got workers' comp insurance over here. Then I got to do
Yep.
that. Then I've got to get my contracts right. Now my contracts aren't right. Now it's this administration piece. I think is part of one of the Achilles heels to most businesses in scaling,
Hmm.
and nobody talks about
Yep.
it. It is swept underneath the rug, and it's just over there in the side corner. And
I think it's one of those pieces that's a great piece to bring up because you have so many people that we see in multiple of the trades inside of the construction industry that it's like, hey, I can go ahead and do this on my own because they do the technical things in the field.
mhm. Yeah,
And they're like, oh, this is easy. I mean, it doesn't look that, they think then they don't realize that the company they're working for, someone's taking care of those things a lot of times because they don't
yeah,
see that piece.
yeah,
And it's like, I can just step into this. All it is I've got to go out and give bids now. That's the only the thing that's any different. And they don't
yeah,
realize how much goes into it. I mean, like Nate was talking about insurance, and like for me, I get an insurance audit every year from my GL company.
me too.
And they want to go ahead and see every subcontractor that we've paid. So they actually want to see my basically my books is what it comes
Yeah,
down to. But they want
yeah,
to see how much money we've paid and who we've paid it to.
yep,
So the how much money part is going to determine how much I pay. So along with the fact that I need to have insurance from all of them, so all of their general liability certificates, all of their workers' comp certificates. So if they're driving trucks, which everybody is, how the hell do you get to the job site if you're not? So their automobile insurance. So all of those pieces they want to go ahead and get a look at. So, and you've got to stay on top of that and collect that, which if it's, if you've only got one or two people working with you, easy to do.
yeah,
So I literally, whenever we do it, I've got somewhere between 35 and 40 contractors that we work with throughout the year, every year, that we've got to be on top of all of their insurance information. And that's on top of what we do on our
yeah,
employee side of things, because that's a whole nother thing that they go ahead and look at whenever they come in too. So all of those pieces like that, all the bookkeeping that Nate talked about earlier. So going ahead and doing the financial statements so you can look at something and analyze it and see what's working, what you might want to go ahead and make different. I mean, all of those different pieces outside of just the, hey, I can get a proposal out and hey, I can go ahead and collect the money. So that's the easy thing. That was what
yeah.
it comes down to.
Yeah,
I agree.
it's all those pieces. And they're small, but they're crucial.
Yep.
And there's nothing like getting an audit and you weren't expecting it and you've got 900 things that you have to get done and now you have to put everything on hold so you
Yep.
can do this audit that then gets you to a point where you got a Zoom call and then they're not prepared and then you're prepared, but then they got to reschedule, but then they ask you for more information. And the next thing you know, you've gobbled up 2 months of your life trying to make this thing happen
Yeah.
while your insurance is on pause. So you can't do any work. So you can't make the
Right.
revenue stream to make like, I'm telling you, the challenges on the administration side, they just need to be paid attention to.
Right.
And you can find somebody that just stays on top of it and
Mhm.
but most people don't.
Yeah, create. I mean, easiest thing to do. So one of the things that we've got in our company, so we've got a spreadsheet of all the contractors that all the subcontractors that work with us. So we go ahead and list their expiration dates on their policies, so we know. And before you go ahead and cut them a check, you
Yep.
literally look at that. So
Yep.
and some of the softwares that you go ahead and use, so some of the project management or actually business management softwares use will have this in there and will actually kick it out. So to you whenever you go ahead and do that. But that's what we
Yeah.
do is they look on the spreadsheet. All right, does so and so have this? Nope. All
Yeah.
right, then we need to get this before the check goes out to them because right now I hold leverage and they're usually looking to go ahead and get their money in their hands as fast as they can.
Yep.
They'll get me the information that we need. But that's what we go ahead and set up. And I've done the same thing Nate talked about, where you're going ahead and it's all of your time. They send you the notification, hey, we're going to do an in-person audit on this date. And you're like, oh crap, I haven't looked at insurances since last year whenever I did insurances. So now it's, hey, who did I pay this year?
Yeah.
So, during that time frame,
Yeah.
and then you've got to go ahead and send out emails and make phone calls and then bug everybody hard for a week to make sure everything shows up the way it's supposed to show up. And you've got to, yeah. So it turns into those types of things can turn into a nightmare really fast.
Yeah. Those are the things that are in that dark corner that you got to shine a light on, you know.
Yes. That comes down to creating a system and a process. And it's unfortunately, you usually learn that after you've had to run the fire drill a couple of times. So
Well,
then you
that's the
start to create the
second part
system
of
and
it,
the
right? It's
process.
like you can get to $1 million
Yep.
and then after $1 million, all these different things kind of come into play. Like this is typically that $1 million is when the insurance audit starts to say, "Hey, you're doing more revenue. We want more money."
Hmm.
The government saying, "Hey, you're doing more revenue. We want more money."
Yeah.
The trades are saying, "Hey, you're doing more. You're doing more revenue.
Everybody
We
wants
want
their
more
hand in your
money."
pocket.
my, my wallet gets smaller and smaller with each turn. You
Yep.
know.
You
So
get you get a whole lot of non-traditional partners who have no real interest in seeing your business improve. They just want their piece.
yeah, they just want part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I've got two more questions for you, Nate.
We got to make it fast.
All right. What's the biggest mistake you made early on? So that was actually a blessing in disguise.
That is a good question. I've made a lot of mistakes. Um, and they've all been blessings. It's kind of like, you spoke about it and I agree with you. It's like I wouldn't change anything that's happened because everything that's happened and everything that I've learned has got me to the point where I'm at today. Right.
Right.
So, um, well, the biggest, it was a mistake, but the biggest thing that happened to me that I think put me on the path was being a father. Um, and I wouldn't call it a mistake, but it wasn't planned. So
Hmm.
it was something where it just kind of happened, and then I had to make a choice, and that
Right.
choice was either uh, I can keep living the life that I was living, or I could, be the father that I guess I always wanted, right? So
Hmm.
that was probably the thing that gave me the most motivation. So
Awesome. Last question.
okay,
If your business disappeared today, just totally went away. So everything crashed. So what would be the first thing that you would do? What would you start to do next?
well, honestly, the first thing I'd probably do would be like go someplace in solitude and say a prayer and just kind of like get rid of whatever that feeling of failure would be if I'd lost
Hmm.
everything and just kind of
Right.
like, all right, I need a new renewed sense of direction.
Hmm.
Probably ask for some guidance and you know, show me where I'm supposed to be, kind of thing. And then
Right.
I'd probably pick myself up and I would probably first thing that I would do would probably go into the nearest um, construction shop inside. Okay, who needs what, or try to figure out, like, if I was like completely destitute, like we're talking
Hmm.
like the Grant Cardone kind of scenario,
Yep.
get thrown into a city and everything else. I would probably go to either a real estate professional or a construction company and get started in one of those two categories, because those are the things that I know in and out, upwards, downwards, backwards. And I would probably just start dusting off and rebuilding and looking at my next niche. Um,
What do
I
you
could,
think that next niche might be if you were going to do that?
if I was going to do it for me,
Hmm.
um, I would probably get into either, training, like teach everybody that everything that I've ever known,
Right.
or I would get into fundraising, which would then
Gotcha.
be raising capital to then do everything that I already know how to do. So it probably want to be one or two or both at the same
Or
time,
both. Right.
because you get to a point where if I've lost everything and I don't have anything left, then
Hmm.
I need to go outside of myself and raise capital or raise awareness or raise the next thing to do the thing that would get me out of the place. And
Hmm.
for me and my knowledge and what I've gotten background, raising capital to then build a house or build an apartment complex or build
Hmm.
a strip center, it would be go and find an investment group, pitch them on the idea of being able to build it, um,
Hmm.
and then bring that. It'd probably be a house, to be honest with you, because I can probably get it built in about 90 days, 95
Hmm.
days. It'd take me 30 days to acquire properties, close on it, build it. So I'm 124 days. I'm 4 months in. I can sleep in my truck. I can build it and probably make around 70 to $100,000 of profit.
Right.
That'd probably be what I do.
Okay. So I love that. And what I want everyone to realize, two of the things that Nate brought up right off the top of the bat, so are one, so the knowledge that he's got from being in the industries he's been in, the businesses that he's run. So he would go ahead and help others with that. So realize that's one of those pieces where we talk about, hey, knowledge is one of those things that you never lose. So once you get that, there's ways to go ahead and leverage that. And that's literally what that would be is, hey, I've got a way to go ahead and help others out and be able to grow their businesses, be able to get their pieces off the ground. So once you go ahead and learn that, that never leaves you. So, and then secondly was the contacts. So whenever you're going ahead and talking about going ahead and raising money to be able to go ahead and start something, that's based on a couple of different things. One of them really heavily though is Nate's reputation in the industry and the people that he's networked with and already made connections with. So those are hugely important pieces as you're going ahead and building your own company or being involved in this industry at all. The better you're connected, the more people you talk to, so the more value you bring to people, the easier it is for opportunities, whether it's new projects, so whether it's a new job, so whether it's going ahead and fundraising, all of those pieces come from that ability to be able to go ahead and do that. And that's huge. And you want to do that no matter where you're at. Like I said, if you're starting out as an employee in the industry, start working on those connections right now because you never know who's going to have the next opportunity for you. So, or who you may have something that you want to bring to them to be able to go ahead and do. So I love those pieces. I think it was a great answer. And I'm going to throw something out there for everybody right now. So Nate mentioned he's got a process that he runs through. So whenever he's making like the big decisions on sabbatical and things like that. So I'm going to say if you go ahead and comment in the comments on this, so and share this, just put process in the comments. If you put process in the comments, so Nate will actually send you out what that quick short process is of how he works through things. So go ahead and put that in
Sure,
there.
I'll do that.
Share that with everybody. So do the same thing. Let them know that they can share this. So and if they put process in there, so we'll go ahead and get that out to them too. So you can actually learn how Nate thinks. Sound good?
Might be crazy in there, but I'll open up my mind to you.
That's all right. We're all a little crazy as far as how that goes. Make sure you do go ahead. One of the best things you can do to help us out, the way this podcast grows, the way we can get our message out to more people, is going ahead and for you to share it, for you to like it, for you to comment on everything. Those are the types of things that go ahead and help build this. We appreciate you. We appreciate those who listen. We appreciate those who share. We love that. Keep coming back. So keep bringing friends. So we're looking to get more positive people, more quality people into this industry so that we can build the construction industry back and keep it strong as we move forward through the next couple of decades. So we look forward to talking to all of you very soon. Have a great day.